morning, glory, and evening grace, everyone. My name's Alex Marlowe. I'm the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, the host of the Alex Marlowe Show podcast on the Salem Podcast Network and also on the weekends in Salem News Channel, and the author of the Hugh Hewitt endorsed Breaking the Law, among other books. But that one's out now, and I'd love it if you checked it out. Hugh certainly liked it. And I have a real privilege today. The last time I was in this seat, it was certainly the most difficult broadcast I've ever done out of, I don't know, probably a couple thousand in my life. It was the day that my good friend and a national treasure, Charlie Kirk, was assassinated, which took place just before we got on air, and we worked through that together. Those of you who are back with me, I really appreciate it. And it is fitting that this was already on the books for me to be here today, the day after Charlie's memorial, which I have to say was a stunner. I was on the floor just 10 or so rows back from the stage, so I had not quite a front row seat, but just about, considering there was 80,000 people in the arena and another 10 or 20,000 in an overflow arena next door, because the way they have it in Glendale, they've got the football stadium next to the baseball stadium. So there are people in the baseball stadium watching on the closed circuit feed, whatever they had going. It was a surreal experience in the best sense of the word. And I'm going to be playing highlights for you today. I'm going to be getting some of my take on what were the key moments. And I'm going to be explaining why I think that this is a huge moment for faith in this country. I think that was the most important thing that happened. Of course, it was a memorial service for Charlie, who deserved it. He deserved that sort of outpouring of love and support for what he represented, for the hard work he did, for the inspiration of hundreds of thousands and then millions now for sure that he had on people. But it was part rock concert. It was part Trump rally. Let's not kid ourselves about that. But it was 100% faith revival. And that's going to be the main theme here today, is that there were people who you would have never thought would be speaking about faith from a stage. I'll play some of those clips. And there are people who are in the highest echelons of American politics and power who are speaking more openly, more boldly about their faith, particularly in Jesus Christ, than I'd ever heard before. And I think this is totally necessary in this country. I grew up in a moment where the internet was just becoming a big thing. So the internet was around, starting from when I was in middle school, was a mainstay. And it became increasingly a part of our lives until now we're at this moment now where young people are just having their brains rewired from adolescence using their phones. And what's ended up happening is this has coincided with us in many areas, not all areas of the country. Some of the areas listening to this show probably are exceptions to this. But where godlessness has encroached on us while this hyper internet online age has imposed its will on us and, again, tried to rewire our brains. I think we're having a big reset here, because before we were pushed out. The Christian conservative, Judeo-Christian conservative coalitions have been pushed to the side, not just by the Democrats, of course, but even in Republican circles. It was not that commonplace to start talking about your faith openly in a political setting. And I think people are going to have a hard reset after the events, not just of Charlie's assassination, but what we witnessed yesterday. And I'll play for you some of the most powerful moments. I'll cut to the chase with some of the biggest ones, but they were top to bottom. It was a stunning event. Before I get into some of the clips, I have to shout out my friends at Turning Point USA. I've been a speaker at these events for many years. I knew Charlie at the founding of Turning Point and was someone that he trusted, and I'll always be proud of that. I'll always be telling the story of my connection to him, which I shared quite a bit the last time I was on the air with Hugh. But I will say that this event came together in a week. It was 80,000 people in a football stadium, and it was completely pleasant. There was air conditioning on. There was water available. There were refreshments for people. There was no violence at all. There was ingress and egress, one of our governor over here, Gavin Newsom's favorite expressions. It was a wonderful event. And of course, the people there were the best. It was just the absolute best people in the country were at this event. And so many of the best people, probably like a lot of you, were watching from home. So I'll keep giving that perspective, but a big congratulations to Turning Point USA. I know we're here at Salem. We're selling some shirts. I Am Charlie t-shirts available on the Salem website, and the proceeds are going to TPUSA. It's a great time to donate to TPUSA. I donate every year. I'll be donating more this year than usual for obvious reasons, but we need to make sure they're bigger and better than ever, especially because I think Charlie did something so brilliant, of all the brilliant things he did. He was mainstreaming the idea of infusing faith and politics again. They're, of course, intricately connected. America would not be an exceptional place without God. We cannot believe in American exceptionalism without the presence of God, and specifically a Judeo-Christian God. It is a miracle that our founders were walking the earth at the same time that they did, were able to work together to forge not just the greatest coalition ever, but write some of the most profound documents in the history of global governance, and to implement them peaceably, and to do it in a way where we had to fight wars, we had to fight battles, we had to deal with internal disagreement, and come out so strong to the point where we are today. And so I feel like the abandonment of faith in our public dialogue was a huge mistake. And I think that that's over now. I think that's over. And I'll tell you, I was lucky enough to be accompanied by a beautiful date, Mrs. Dr. Marlowe, my wife, who is with me. And she's someone who doesn't live a day-to-day the political life that we do. She's 100% supportive of what I do. But I found myself leaning over to her and commenting on one thing consistently throughout the night. I've never heard a Secretary of State talk like this. I've never heard a vice president talk like this. And I wasn't talking about the political content. I was talking about the religious content, the incorporation of Jesus Christ into their political message shamelessly. And that's a good thing, because you shouldn't have shame in honoring Jesus Christ and exalting Jesus Christ. The big moment of the night, and it would be a mistake to not start here, is from Erica Kirk, Charlie's wife, who gave just the most stunning speech imaginable. And this is the moment that everyone's talking about. It's the front page everywhere, and as it should be, one of the most profound moments, maybe in the history of the country. Maybe we'll look back on this as one of the most profound moments. I will play it without any further introduction. Cut 9, Mr. Duane.
He wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life. That young man, on the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man, that young man, I forgive him. I forgive him because it was what Christ did and is what Charlie would do. The answer to hate is not hate. The answer we know from the gospel is love, and always love. Love for our enemies and love for those who persecute us.
Duane said something really interesting to me when I got in the studio. He said the three most powerful words in evangelism are, "I forgive you." And it's interesting because I'm a Catholic, so every Mass we recite the Lord's Prayer. And forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Forgiveness is a given, and it is the most godly thing you can do. A sensational, chilling moment. Everyone in the room had chills, audible gasp in the room, a historic speech on a historic day. I love clip shows. Probably my favorite show was to play the best clips and to respond to them, and I was fortunate enough to be present for a real Woodstock-like event. I think it was a real seminal cultural moment, a faith revival / Trump rally at the same time / memorial for the great Charlie Kirk. It was a fitting send-off, I have to say. It felt very nourishing to be there for the soul, and I'm glad I mostly watched these things from home. I have to admit, I've seen hundreds of Trump rallies from home. But it was really nice to be able to see such a historic thing in the flesh. Our friend Hugh was on Fox and Friends, And he had a reaction to it, and I want to play that right now. Let's play cut one, please, guys.
Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt joins me now. Hugh, great to have you on the program. I want to read a quote from the New York Post editorial board who says this could actually be a good thing for the country, an AOC presidential run, because it will, quote, force the Democrat Party to either finally quit playing footsie with the far left or go all in, and so get slaughtered, opening the way for a new, sane liberal party to surface. You agree with that, Hugh?
I do. I do think that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez comes out of the Democratic Socialist wing of the party. It is hard left. And I also think, I want to point this out, Todd, when she took to the floor of the House last week to attack Charlie Kirk, it was below the standards of common decency that most Americans expect. And on the other side of yesterday, which I believe will go down as probably the world's largest ever evangelical moment, and the emotional moment where Erica Kirk forgave the killer, the testimonies of Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio, President Trump's salute to there's nothing that anyone with a good heart can't accomplish. That on the other side of that, most Americans, and I think Americans playing between the tens, not even the 20s, but between the tens, are going to say she lacks the basic decency we expect out of someone coming from the Democratic Party. Add on these far left-wing positions that she holds and her charge against Charlie of ignorance, which was rebutted by, like, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College yesterday, and Dr. Ben Carson, the brain surgeon and former HUD secretary, and you're going to find yourself looking at a big mountain. I think the sequence of events, from her comments on the floor to that hugely evangelical testimony that went on for hours about the objective truth of Christianity yesterday, to this week, her stock crashed over the weekend because most Americans are good-hearted and not that crazy about politics, and especially about extremist politics, and her policies are extreme. So I think the Post is correct.
Not to be outdone there, Hugh. The country spends one day remembering Charlie Kirk. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett not sharing in that. She doubles down on her vote against a resolution to honor him. Let's listen to Jasmine Crockett.
The rhetoric that Charlie Kirk continuously put out there was rhetoric that specifically targeted people of color. And so it is unfortunate that even our colleagues could not see how harmful his rhetoric was, specifically to us. Yeah, I'm not honoring that kind of stuff. And it is unfortunate that more of my colleagues, even on my side of the aisle, could not see the amount of harm that this man was attempting to inflict upon our communities.
Hugh, she apparently missed Turning Point's Young Black Leadership Summit, and of course, the other outreach to the black community from Turning Point and from Charlie Kirk himself over the years. Your thoughts?
She missed a lot. I saw that. I saw that clip before the service began. It's objectively not true about Charlie. I've known Charlie since 2013. He didn't have a racist bone in his heart. He spoke about issues of race when they came up in the national conversation with great care and concern for listeners everywhere. So it's objectively not true. Again, I think this is going to be putting Congresswoman Crockett opposite 90% of America who never dance on the graves of the dead, especially in the middle, on the morning of what is, again, I'll just say it again, Todd, objectively the largest evangelical service I've ever seen, with person after person testifying to the objective truth of Christianity, and she's attacking the victim and the victim's family indirectly by calling them racist. They're not. She's wrong. An apology would help her. It might redeem AOC. But folks in politics, and I think in the news business, have got to recognize that yesterday was, to borrow Charlie's phrase, a significant turning point in the return of religion to the public square and of belief to the public square. And if they get that wrong and they're tin-eared about it, the American people are listening very closely in the aftermath of it, as they did after RFK's shooting, which I can barely remember, after they did after JFK's assassination. And they're listening not for anything except kindness and decency and perhaps maybe some affinity for religious belief that if it's missing, it's going to put them in a distinct minority. So she did miss a lot. You're right, Todd. She missed a lot of Charlie Kirk. That's unfortunate. Maybe she'll go watch the tapes and call Erica Kirk and apologize.
So well said. Hugh Hewitt, thanks for getting up early with us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, very great, very smooth. I don't think he missed a syllable in that. That's good broadcasting. He's a pro, that Hugh. He and I had very similar thoughts here. It was interesting how he name-checked in that first answer Vance's speech and Rubio's speech when I was speaking in the opening specifically about how I'd never seen Secretary of State and the Vice President speak this way about their faith. That's very striking to people who followed American politics for a long time, to see that type of overt praising of Jesus Christ from such prominent political figures. It's just not something we've seen a lot in recent memory. It's really been frowned upon by our media, suggesting that any praise of our Lord and Savior is a not separation of church and state, which of course makes no sense at all. We'd all been conditioned to be respectful of those people who felt that way. And I don't think we're going to be respectful of them anymore. I think we are going to talk about our faith in a much more open way. And, there's some pitfalls here, so we'll have to be mindful to some degree. But I think overall, I think this is the correct approach, and it's one that's long overdue given the demonic nature of some of what's going on the left and in online communities. And, just playing those Jasmine Crockett clips is suggesting that Charlie's rhetoric was harmful. He was politely debating people. I call now on Jasmine Crockett to go to a college campus and sit there and hold court and talk to conservative students and actually debate them. She can't do it because the viral moments will be too hilarious. It will be career ending for her. But instead she just has to announce that Charlie's intending to inflict harm. He was intending to inflict harm. So this is a person who just got shot in the neck in front of adoring fans and on 4K video. A man of 31 years old with 2 small children and a committed marriage, and he was the one who he was the one committing harm, not the people who shot him. So I know as a person, but we know he was radicalized by the left. That's the nature of things in this country. It makes you want to fight them, but also what makes you want to treat them as people who need saving themselves. I started the show with the clip of Erica Kirk saying that she forgives Charlie's assassin, which was by far the most profound moment of a very long and wonderful day. But she had a line before that I think was, I won't say quite as important, but was very, very important, and one of the points of the day to be made. Let us play cut 33, please, Dwayne.
God's mercy and God's love have been revealed to me these past 10 days. After Charlie's assassination, we didn't see violence. We didn't see rioting. We didn't see revolution. Instead, we saw what my husband always prayed he would see in this country. We saw revival.
That's how it felt. It felt like a revival. And it's also just so important to remind this of people who might be apolitical in your life to grant that contrast. Dwayne, you have to fact check me on this. I didn't think of this until just now. But is it true that Charlie and George Floyd the same birthday? Will you fact check me on that? Because that's what I saw on the internet.
I will go look it up. Yeah. But that comparison sure was being made all over the place.
It sure was being made all over. And why wouldn't it be? Because George Floyd dies, everyone lies about it and says that he was, some sort of a saint, and he was a guy with a bad record and was on fentanyl and was resisting arrest. And he was not behaving as an exemplary human being. And Charlie Kirk's entire life was about trying to be excellent in everything he did. And when he wasn't being excellent, he was looking up to people around him who were excellent. That's why he was such a big sports fan. That's why he forged a great relationship with Dr. Larry Arnn of Hillsdale. I'll play the entirety of Dr. Arnn's remarks later in the show. And when Charlie passes away in legitimately violent, inexcusable circumstances, all of his supporters come out and praise God. And this was the thing that really struck you. I have chills just thinking about it when I was in the room, that how great is our God was the chant early in the night. Our great is our God. It was still the morning, actually. But that was what people were thinking about in the building. They were thinking about how great is our God to give us the gift of one more day on earth. Even though we lost our good friend, we are going to make it good, and we're going to make it just in the end. We're going to find grace in the end. That was the message of everyone in the room, and it was truly stunning, and it was just so warm. It was a warm sensation to be around it. Of course, there are sad moments throughout the day, And there was nervous energy, of course, with all of it going on. I think the cabinet broke protocol. I think the top 6 or so on the lines of succession of the presidency were all in the room. Elon Musk was there. He had a meetup with President Trump, which they kind of downplayed it after the fact. But it was great to see him. I have to tell you something. I'm not a huge Elon Musk fan. And I think that his ties to China were always off-putting to me. And I think that some of the things that he stands for, be it the H-1Bs, are not up my alley. But when I saw him walk in and he sat just in front of me, just a few rows up, I was happy to see him. I was really happy to see him. And I think that's something that differentiates us from the people we're up against politically, is that we feel like we still love our fellow man, even if they don't see the light yet, politically or religiously or spiritually. And it is a spiritual battle we're in, and we're playing a very long game here. And that was very apparent in the room. And of course, Erica's speech is really what brought it out the most. Let me play one more clip of Erica, because I've got this one handy. I really make sure I get to it. Cut 12, please.
Men watching around the world, accept Charlie's challenge and embrace true manhood. Be strong and courageous for your families. Love your wives and lead them. Love your children and protect them. Be the spiritual head of your home. But please be a leader worth following. Your wife is not your servant. Your wife is not your employee. Your wife is not your slave. She is your helper. You are not rivals. You are one flesh working together for the glory of God.
The one flesh line, straight out of the Bible. It's a common refrain in the Marlowe household. Incredible advice for young men from Erica Kirk. Charlie spoke a lot about this towards the end of his life. Advice for young men, the importance of starting a family, being the spiritual head of that family. It's wonderful. Hopefully that message lives on forever. I got the Alex Marlowe Show podcast, daily news show on the Salem Podcast Network, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, author of the Hugh Hewitt endorsed Breaking the Law, and it is so much to get to today. We got some breaking news I'll touch on momentarily, but first I want to tell you about Americans for a Balanced Budget. Congress's approval of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act was a defining victory for President Trump and the American people. But that win's now at risk. Unless Congress acts before the end of the year, a massive health care tax hike will hit millions of Americans. Americans for a Balanced Budget is sounding the alarm. Key health care tax credits are set to expire on December 31st. If they lapsed, 24 million Americans could face skyrocketing health care costs. Millions may lose coverage entirely. Rural communities would be hit especially hard with job losses, fewer providers, and reduced access to care. Congress must act this year to protect these vital tax credits for Americans who buy their own health insurance. President Trump's pollsters found that 77% of voters, including 70% of Trump supporters, are more likely to vote for candidates who preserve these credits. Americans for a Balanced Budget is calling on Congress to keep the full promise of the One Big Beautiful Bill by stopping a devastating health care tax hike before the year's end. Your voice counts. Visit StopHealthCostHikes.com to tell Congress. Act now, protect tax credits, and prevent higher health care costs. Stop rising costs before it's too late. Visit StopHealthCostHikes.com today. All right, so what I opened with was this discussion of how the normalization, the mainstreaming at the highest echelons of American politics of discussion of faith is the big major takeaway for me from the night. And here are the two examples which producer Dwayne has dutifully pulled for me. The first one came from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who I might say in the room, arguably the best speech of the night, probably top 3 for me, just a unbelievable rhetorician. Rubio is. Cut number 21, sir.
Look, I think he had a tremendous impact on young Americans in general. I think he had a very special and direct impact on young men in this country. That's one of the greatest developments I've seen. It's been very positive. I think we remember him for that. I think we remember him for constantly saying, you want to live a productive life, get married, start a family, love your country. These are powerful messages. But I hope many who are watching, I imagine there are people watching here tonight that didn't know much about Charlie Kirk until 11 days ago. Maybe they were disengaged from politics. Maybe they were partially engaged. I hope one of the things they take from this is that the movement Charlie Kirk led and started and gave fuel to was about politics, but not only about politics. It was deeper. It was broader. And I would say that, taking the liberty, but I'm confident he would agree, one of the things he wants us to take away from this, from all of this, is the following. His deep belief that we were all created, every single one of us, before the beginning of time, by the hands of the God of the universe, an all-powerful God, who loved us and created us for the purpose of living with him in eternity. But then sin entered the world and separated us from our Creator. And so God took on the form of a man and came down and lived among us. And he suffered like men. And he died like a man. But on the third day, he rose unlike any mortal man. And to prove any doubters wrong, he ate with his disciples so they could see, and they touched his wounds. He didn't rise as a ghost or as a spirit, but as flesh. And then he rose to the heaven, but he promised he would return, and he will. And when he returns, because he took on that death, because he carried that cross, we were freed from the sin that separated us from him. And when he returns, there will be a new heaven and a new earth, and we will all be together, and we are going to have a great reunion there again with Charlie and all the people we love. Thank you, and God bless you.
How good is that? I mean, and that's not just generic, we believe in God, we trust in God. That is the gospel. He is preaching the gospel in a football stadium packed to the rafters, every single seat filled, with overflow crowds of tens of thousands and millions watching at home, and the Secretary of State, probably the next vice president, possibly the next president, flat out preaching the gospel. Just surreal and beautiful. And that was backed up by this moment, number 34 from the vice president.
Little uncomfortable talking about my faith in public as much as I loved the Lord and as much as it was an important part of my life. I have talked more about Jesus Christ in the past 2 weeks than I have my entire time in public life. And that is an undeniable legacy of the great Charlie Kirk. You know, he loved God. And because he loved God, he wanted to understand God's creation and the men and women made in his image. Now, much has been said over the last week about Charlie's ability to approach.
It means so much to me. I was in that group of people like Charlie who got to know Vice President Vance before he was known as a politician. He had the Hillbilly Elegy, was the #1 best-selling book, sold millions of copies. And I connected with him over that, and it was before his Ohio Senate run. And so I got the chance to speak with him about his faith. And so it just speaks even louder to me on a personal level, just knowing that in a way we were kind of coached in terms of our politicians, even Republicans, to not talk as openly about their faith. And I'll tell you that moment, I've been thinking it. The day started at 5 in the morning. We were walking on foot a couple miles to the stadium by 7 in the morning. We were in our seats by about 8 o'clock. The event didn't start until 11. This speech probably occurred at 2:30. It had been 7-8 hours of this stuff, and the whole day was building up to me for someone to blow that release valve and announce what we're doing. We are talking about God and Jesus Christ in a political setting, and we're doing it openly, we're doing it fearlessly, and we're never going back. We're never going back to the secularism that dominated American life for the last half century. It's over. This was a big evangelical revival. This is something that, for me as a practicing Catholic, I felt this as it was a relief to me. It feels like it is now, the doors are blown wide open to be open with people in our lives about the importance of God and faith in their lives. And it feels like something that is maybe going to be the most powerful legacy of Charlie. I don't know. He's got a lot of them, but that's how it felt yesterday in the room. All right, it's a faith revival on the Hugh Hewitt Show with Alex Marlow, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. Kimmel's coming back. Apparently got breaking news. We got some Supreme Court breaking news. I'll touch on that next hour, too. But we got Kimmel's coming back. I imagine he's going to apologize, right? Because if he's not, then that's just going to be really, really inflammatory. But
after yesterday, if he doesn't apologize, what is that going to look like?
Yeah, I don't know how that's going to go, and it's just great for us, just terrific content. This is the proverbial win-win for our side, because if Disney caves to Kimmel and the people who are protesting outside Disney, because there's a lot of internal pressure at Disney, because Disney knows a lot of their audience are normal conservative people. And this is something that I think people don't get, because I've got a close friend who works at Disney, and they know their audience is just families, because they're kids there, and the left doesn't have kids the way conservatives do. So, but they know on a personal level, they're also have the woke mind virus. So it is interesting which side is going to win out, the side that cares about their business or the side that cares about the people who are there around the water cooler with at Disney when they're making the content. So it seems like the water cooler crowd is going to win out, but maybe he gives a big apology, but I don't even know what that looks like. The bottom line is his ratings stink, and the advertisers aren't going to want to be in his show. And if he comes back, that's going to extend the news cycle for me, because there'll be huge, I think, protests. I think there'll be huge advertiser boycotts that'll go on, and that's going to be so fun to track, because that guy's a big jerk. And I got to tell you, I said it on my podcast, I do believe him deliberately lying about the nature of the mind of the person who is suspected of assassinating Charlie. We'll say suspected for lawyers out there watching the show. Make sure I don't get Hugh and Salem in any trouble. He was obviously a person on the Trantifa left, radicalized by trans and Antifa. And for Kimmel to deliberately go out and spread disinformation, this creates the climate of violence. This creates the assassination culture that we're concerned about. And I was tracking this. There's a poll, and I flagged this on my X page, X the Everything app, which is at Alex Marlow, if you guys care to see this. But Jesse Kelly flagged this survey that shows that 3 times as many Democrats believe that the assassin was a right-winger. And that's all from left-wing people like Kimmel, left-wing platforms like Blue Sky running a deliberate disinformation and misinformation campaign. This is legit fake news. And if you're listening to this show, you're guaranteed to be out of that bubble. But there are enough people in this country who are sleepwalking through the country, through their lives, with this inside one of these left-wing bubbles where they could potentially get away with this lie that this was a MAGA guy who murdered Charlie Kirk. So that is very dangerous, and I think that just by protecting the assassin, what they're doing is furthering the climate of violence, and that's why it's inappropriate for Kimmel to be back on the air, apology or not. He is inciting violence with his deliberate lies. That's my position on this, and if you disagree, you can email me, aloha@alexmarlow.com, and I will, if you got a compelling disagreement, I'll read it on the air. I guarantee you that. All right, we got a lot to do. Still in the show, I got Don Jr. clips for you. What else we got? I got Larry Arnn. What do we got? Pastor Rob McCoy. We've got some Donald Trump himself. So much to do from this wonderful event that I was blessed by God to be a part of yesterday. My name's Alex Marlow. I'm the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, and I'm very grateful to Hugh Hewitt for allowing me to fill his mighty shoes on the Salem radio channels as well as the Salem News channel today. And it is one of those shows where it's going to fly by. I'll tell you that. The last time I was in this seat, I was doing the most difficult broadcast of my life. I had just heard the news that my friend Charlie Kirk had been assassinated. And I'll tell you, it was a difficult 3 hours. I was grateful for the time, though. I was glad that I was the one to be able to share it with some of you in the audience. I'll tell you, today will be one of the easiest shows because we are playing some clips from maybe the greatest political/spiritual event in the history of the country, perhaps. Up there. It's got to be up there, certainly my lifetime. I have one guest today, and that is Joel Pollack. Joel Pollack is senior editor-at-large for me at Breitbart News, and he is someone who knew Charlie very well from the very start. And I'm going to bring in Joel right at the top. Joel, the main reason why I want you here is I want you to hear the Charlie Kirk origin story from Joel. And this is something that I do think this event was an A+++ yesterday, but I would have loved to have heard this story from someone that Joel's going to share. But first, Joel, you're a Jewish person, an Orthodox Jew, and there was a lot of Jesus Christ talk yesterday. What was your reaction to that? I think I know what you might say, but I just want to hear from you. I put you on the spot.
Well, I think it's appropriate, actually, at any sort of funeral that there be some religious content because most religions have these rites of passage, whether it's birth or christening, naming, some kind of coming of age like a bar mitzvah, then wedding, and finally death. And so you expect there to be some religious content. I do think that there was a greater emphasis on Charlie's Christian beliefs and his Christian example than many people might have expected, especially because he was seen primarily by the public as a political figure rather than as a religious leader. And partly that's because Charlie did become more religious and more interested in religion as time went on. And I think that's because he saw, as many of the speakers said, that the real issues in the United States may not be political, but may be deeper than politics. They may be cultural, they may be spiritual. We are a country with a deep search for meaning, and religion answers that search. So I think Charlie saw that, and he would also just give life advice to some of the young people he encountered on campus. As he grew older and became married and became a father and a husband, I think he also felt more comfortable dispensing that kind of advice. So it's partly about Charlie's journey, but I also think it's partly about where his organization is going and the particular moment that our country is in. I think that Christian Americans have felt suppressed for a long time in a country where they are the majority. They felt like they have not been able to express themselves. And I think that's what you saw pouring out at the vigils and at Charlie's memorial. And I think that's all entirely healthy. I do think that people need to be ecumenical when they adopt that sort of religious focus at a political funeral, at a very public funeral. Because, of course, we are a diverse nation with many different religious beliefs. Even within the broad Christian faith, there are many different rituals and understandings. And it's funny, I had two very well-known political columnists come up to me at the back of the room on last Sunday night at the Washington, D.C. vigil and say, you know, we don't really understand this evangelical stuff. We're Lutherans. And I said, well, you know, I'm the Jew in the back of the room. I mean, we're in the same boat. So, you know, I think it's important to retain some sense of the ecumenical and not let things fly off the rails. Tucker Carlson said some controversial things that were not taken very well by some of the Jewish supporters in the audience. I think he referenced the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 26, which is about the Jewish leaders at the time plotting to kill Jesus. And I don't think Tucker interpreted that story in a classical New Testament way. And I think people felt like he was alluding to a conspiracy theory about Israel supposedly killing Charlie.
He's very clever. I mean, no one pushes buttons like Tucker this day and age. He's the number one. But I'll tell you, in the room though, his speech came off excellent. But yeah, there's a lot of speculation online, which I don't think I'm going to take a lot of Hugh's air to get into it.
No, we don't have to.
But it is. I will allow people to do their own research on that one if they would like. But Joel, I really want your reaction specifically because, you know, when you're hearing the Secretary of State talk about the Gospels and you're hearing every single leader talk about Jesus Christ, pretty much, who is up there, it feels like in a society that's gotten more secular and has been worse off for it. I have a feeling you would agree that this is all in all a positive, even though you don't share the exact same theology as the people who are on the stage.
Not only is it a positive, it's absolutely necessary. And
yes.
I've written before at Breitbart, and others have written, you know, one of my favorite writers on this topic is actually a Jewish Israeli man named Yoram Hazony, who has written and lectured before about how America needs a Christian revival. He said, look, we are undergoing a revival in the Jewish community. People are becoming more religious, but we're 2% of the population. We can't do this for America. America has to have a Christian revival if it's going to be able to resist the challenge of radical Islam, of Chinese communism, and of general anarchy and nihilism. And we have to return to our founding principles, which are deeply rooted in the Christian faith. So Jewish scholars who've thought about this intensely have said, yes, please, Christians, be more Christian. And I think from that point of view, it's entirely welcome. And I think there's nothing about the memorial that made anybody who's not Christian or not evangelical feel excluded. I saw many people participating on stage who didn't necessarily identify their denominations, but, you know, Stephen Miller is Jewish and he's married to a Jewish woman, and you've got Marco Rubio, who I believe is Catholic, speaking about Christianity and the general Christian faith. So I don't think people felt excluded. And I think that we may look back, as many speakers said, we may look back at this moment as the turning point really in the conversation about faith in America, where we are bringing it back into the public square. And, people will criticize that. But what Charlie understood, and he said this, and this was played, I think, at the memorial, what he understood is that young people are looking for structure, and faith provides that structure. And you can quibble with this or that element of the structure. I teased Charlie once. He put a post up on X telling young men to stop partying and get married. And my reply to that was, marriage is where the party starts, actually. Let's flip that. So I think you can come at the same problem from different approaches, but Charlie understood that many of these young people he was encountering on campus just had no structure in their lives. And so I think it's a welcome return of faith in the direction that faith provides.
Yeah, and this is, I think, really, really important. And I love your point, actually. But I think Charlie would have loved to hear that point out for you. And that was one thing that I loved about Charlie. Is he was, of course, deeply knowledgeable and had a lot of wisdom. But he was always developing ideas and challenging his own opinions. He was employing his own scientific method in a way where you're challenging your own hypotheses. I will say you're a great friend of Robert F. Kennedy, and he gave an amazing speech because he looked very unwell. And it's one of these things where it takes such bravery to speak publicly when you're not someone who he doesn't present well, but the content of his speech is always just absolutely sensational. He's maybe the best speech writer of the group. And what was it like for you to see that one, Joel?
Well, I'm going to be very honest, and yes, I do have a friendship with him that predates his entry into the administration. He lives near my home in Los Angeles, and we have spent some time together hiking and that kind of thing. And I think, first of all, the content of his speech was deeply personal in that it was useful to members of the audience as they struggled with their own grief. And he talked about the process of overcoming grief after the loss of his brother. I will say this, however, also as a great admirer of his father, the late Robert F. Kennedy Sr., who was gunned down in California as he had just won the Democratic nomination for president in 1968. One of my political heroes, actually, one of the great politicians of the 20th century. He was assassinated as his brother was assassinated.
Joel, you have to forgive me. Hold the thought. You're going to tell me exactly why the Kennedy speech was important from your vantage point, and we're going to get the Charlie Kirk origin story. And Joel Pollack is with me. Got a few more minutes with Joel. Okay, Joel, you're building up to your grand conclusion about why the Robert Kennedy speech was important. I think it was a very important speech, partially because of the bravery it takes to speak in a room full of 100,000 people when you don't speak particularly well. But his words are incredible. What was your thought?
So, of course, he lost his father to an assassin in 1968, in June 1968. And there's nobody who has endured the pain of what Erica Kirk and some of the other colleagues of Charlie Kirk are going through right now, quite like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He also lost his uncle and his brother, of course, but his uncle, JFK, to an assassin in 1963. So he's had a lot of experience in dealing with this. And that made his speech particularly poignant. He didn't even have to talk about that directly. What I might have done is to cite Robert F. Kennedy Sr.'s speech after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr. Kennedy was campaigning in Indianapolis in 1968 on the night that Martin Luther King was shot. And he was in a black neighborhood speaking to a black audience that hadn't heard about the assassination. You know, people didn't have smartphones then, so they weren't getting instant updates and push notifications and things like that. So he told them about the assassination. He also told them the assassin had likely been a white man. We now know that it was. And he said, please remember the majority of white people and black people in this country all want the same thing. We want a prosperous, safe, healthy, democratic society. And by bringing it back to what everyone had in common, he helped keep the temperature down such that Indianapolis was one of the only cities in the country, major cities, that didn't have rioting that night. So I think his example, or his father's example, really is something to look at for how we deal with a moment like this. But he didn't want to go there. It's interesting. I think it's very deeply personal, maybe still too personal after so many years. Instead, he spoke about how one deals with the grief of losing a loved one, perhaps in ordinary circumstances. And I think it was still relevant to the people in the room.
Yeah, it was. I'll tell you, because that was one of the things that my wife brought up to me afterwards when we were comparing notes on favorite moments. Joel, this is the moment I really wanted to have you on for. Charlie, something that was absent from the mostly perfect event yesterday, especially all things considered, was there's a straight line between Andrew Breitbart and Charlie Kirk, and a lot of that goes through you. And I wanted you to share how Charlie found us at Breitbart and the role that we were fortunate enough to play in Charlie's rise.
Charlie wrote an email to me in April 2012. He was a high school senior, and he got my email address from the organizer of the Chicago Tea Party rally that had just happened in Daley Plaza the day before. I had been there. I was speaking. Some of my other Breitbart colleagues were there. I think Dana Lash, who was then at Breitbart, was there. And Charlie missed me at the rally, but he got my email address from somebody. And he wrote to me as a high school kid might have written to Charlie nowadays. He wrote to me and he said, hey, I have this economics class. It's biased against conservatives. The textbook is biased. What do I do? And I think he was looking for arguments or strategies. And instead, because of Andrew Breitbart's vision of citizen journalism, we encouraged him to write a piece about what was going on in his high school. And he had specifically mentioned Andrew in his email. He said that he was deeply inspired by Andrew Breitbart. And so he began writing at Breitbart. He wrote a piece about his high school economics class. He wrote pieces about other topics. And he started to get attention. He started going on the Fox Business Network, Fox News Channel. And that became the doorway for him to interact with business leaders, donors, organizers, people who saw the incredible talent that Charlie Kirk had as a public speaker, as a writer, and as a leader, and as a visionary. And what might have been written off as just another precocious high school kid who wants to be a Republican politician one day, they saw something much deeper in Charlie. I think he would have succeeded regardless of where he started. But the fact is, he wrote us an email because he was inspired by Andrew Breitbart. And I think it's an important lesson. You know, Andrew Colvett said something, his co-host of the Charlie Kirk show. Andrew said something interesting on stage at Charlie's memorial, which is that Charlie answered every single email that came into the show. And Andrew Colvett said he found that fascinating and amazing, and he would check after each show to see if Charlie had done it. And I think I know why Charlie did that, because we were answering emails and we found his email and answered it. And I think he understands that you can answer an email and open an entirely new world of possibilities for a talented individual. And I think Charlie was always looking to lift other people up and give other people the chance that he had.
That's so great. It's a couple of things I want to respond to there. First of all, I do think that Charlie would have succeeded at whatever he tried. I think he was touched by God in that way. And I talked to Andrew Colvett about this many years ago, that we were talking about how Charlie probably would have been a tech billionaire if that was the route he wanted to go, but he wanted to go down this route. So this is where he was with Turning Point. But I love that moment of the speech too, because I was on Charlie's show every week, as I've been known to point out, and we'll note that probably for as long as I live. But that's a detail about me. And occasionally I would feel like I would complete an answer and Charlie wasn't entirely checked in on what I was saying. And now the piece of the puzzle that was missing for me got answered yesterday is he was responding to an email. Like, that's what was going on. Because Andrew said that he would respond during the middle of the show. Like, during the middle of the show, he would be replying. And he knew I got it. He knew I was going to be relatively smart and interesting, and I wasn't going to say anything that was going to get him in trouble. So that would give him a chance if I was doing a 75-second answer. He had a second to reply to someone. And so I might be thinking, wow, this is awkward. Charlie's not really replying to me. No, he's doing emails because he's got to interact with the people.
Right. Look, he was extremely busy. He was doing so many things at once. I was on the Charlie Kirk show a couple of times, and now, of course, I regret that they weren't better appearances, because I think that opportunities like this, and obviously being on the Hugh Hewitt show is an incredible privilege. But the fact is, and this won't surprise you, Alex, I hate doing video. I mean, I like audio. I'm a radio guy. I have a face for radio, as they say, but also there's so much more that goes into a video setup. And Charlie knows that the public wants video, okay? He was a great marketer as well. He wanted to create a visual medium. People like seeing the people who are speaking. I'm not like that. I might be the exception because I grew up loving radio. But I feel like every time I got invited on Charlie's show, I always grumbled a little bit about it because I'd have to set up a camera and
Yeah,
figure out if
that's
my
right.
reception was any good. I mean, here I'm in a friend's house in one of the guest rooms, and I couldn't get the camera angle right, so I'm sitting on the floor. I mean, I can't stand video. but so I feel like I didn't have great appearances. I mean, you and I are having a good conversation now, but I feel bad that I didn't do a better job on Charlie's show and connect with him more directly.
Yeah,
Invited me
I
on
know.
to talk to him.
This is so funny because I'm the same way. Is that I loved radio because it was theater of the mind, and I constantly had a little earbud in my ear. And my first job, as a law clerk, I had this little radio it was radio only, and I had the AM stations. I had my pre-program set, and I had a Hugh show, and I had an Elder show, and I know exactly what I was listening to throughout the day. At Prager show, of course, and I had a little one earbud thing, and I pop it in and connect it to a cord. That was how I consumed radio. And now radio, you got to look good. Like a face for radio is now you look like Henry Cavill or something because like in order to do radio, like I have no idea why we changed, but that is the world. And Charlie got it. Joel Pollack, Senior Editor at Large for Breitbart News. He's a terrific show on SiriusXM Patriot 125 Sunday nights, Breitbart News Sunday. Thank you, Joel, for those wonderful stories. All right, everyone in the Salem family loves Dr. Larry Arnn, and he gave a moving tribute to Charlie yesterday. But I want to say before I play it, Charlie had told Hugh that Hugh and Dr. Arnn, when they had their Hillsdale dialogue on Fridays, Charlie listened to all 15 years worth of these, every single one. He said he never missed one. And knowing Charlie, he's the one person in my life who, when he says something like that, I actually believe him. This was one of the better speeches of the night. There are so many great speeches, but this is certainly one of the better ones. I want to play this in full. I'll cut it if I have to, Dwayne, but maybe I won't. Let's see. Let's just kick it in. 28, please.
Please welcome to the stage Larry Arnn.
Good morning. We had the pastor. I'm the school teacher. I have one short story to tell you about Charlie Kirk, my friend. He became a friend of mine because I interrogated him one time. 19-year-olds are my specialty. I asked him some questions he couldn't answer, and he was already becoming famous. And I noticed his reaction. He said, "What should I do?" And I said, "Well, you have to suffer. If you want to grow, you have to suffer. Hard to learn. Into the night. Crack of dawn in the morning. Start with the Bible. Read the classics. Study the founding of America. In those places, you will find that there's a ladder that reaches up toward God. And at the bottom of it is the ordinary good things that are around us everywhere. If we can call them by their names, they have being. And the beings of the good things are figments of God. You will find that article in Aristotle. You will find it in the Bible. You will find it in Madison and Jefferson. How do I learn that? He said. And I said, you have to suffer. You have to study. You have to think. I thought I'd never hear from him again. Within a month, he got hold of my cell phone number and he texted me a copy of a certificate of completion of a Hillsdale College online course. He would go on to do that 31 times. I keep a list in my head of the 6 or 8 young people, and I'm very privileged I get to know many inspiring young people who are the best I ever saw. Charlie is the only one who was never a full-time student at Hillsdale College who was on that list. We will miss him dearly. He can't be replaced. You know, a good thing is a thing that has being. An assassin is not a thing that has being. The assassin must give up his humanity to destroy something that has being. Charlie lives on. The assassin will die. My wife, who's here with me today, and I have set up a scholarship in the hope that Charlie's children will go to a good college. I have one in mind. And this May the 9th, Erica doesn't know this yet, we are going to give Charlie and Erica the greatest respect a college can give, an honorary degree. Charlie, you see, has suffered enough. He's gone to the Lord. He deserves his reward. Thank you.
Beautiful tribute, absolutely touching. The honorary degree, a nice icing on the cake for that. All good things are figments of God. Just amazing sentiment. It really resonated with me. I've been a privileged person. I've had a lot of blessings, but the things in my life that I'm most proud of that mean the most to me involve some suffering. I was just thinking about last week. I had to give a couple of speeches, both on Charlie's behalf, and they involve suffering. Like the writing process, the editing process, the will this come together, the staring at the blank page, the nervousness before going out on stage. And that's just one day. And Charlie found that there was no task that he was afraid of and no suffering that was ever too much if there was something that he thought brought our country to a better place and brought him closer to God. An amazing sentiment. The left destroys, we build, Charlie built. We are talking about the just sensational event that Turning Point USA put on to the memorial for Charlie Kirk. I was there in person on the floor in Glendale, Arizona. It was a full football stadium with tens of thousands in an overflow baseball stadium adjacent to the football stadium. We're hearing 100 million plus people have already viewed the event online. I'll tell you, a lot of people said they saw me on various streams, which was really interesting just from the cameras that are in the audience, which is, it was a who's who, people there and people there to celebrate the life of a great man, a friend of mine, a friend of everyone here at Salem News. It's Charlie Kirk. And one thing that was connective tissue amongst all of the speeches was God. And even those who were Jewish who spoke were speaking about God. A lot of the Christians in the audience or in the amongst the speakers were speaking about Jesus Christ personally. And that even includes those who do not necessarily come to mind when you think of who are the faith leaders in this country. One of the absolute best speeches of the night came from Donald Trump Jr. I'm friends with Donald Trump Jr., so I might have a little bias here, but I think it was a masterful speech that started with uproarious jokes and laughter and built to something that was a very personal and maybe one of the best biblical references, if not the best, of the day. This occurred right here, cut 19, Mr. Dwayne.
Last week, Charlie joined a long line of courageous men and women who were martyred for what they believe. According to the book of Acts, the first martyr in the early Christian church was Stephen, who was stoned to death. And as Stephen was being killed, he said, "Behold, I see the heavens opened and the Son of Man standing at the right hand of God." Now, there are many times in the Bible where Jesus is seated at the right hand of God, but this is the only time he's seen standing. And while the Bible isn't explicit about this, I like to think Jesus was standing to welcome Stephen, the courageous martyr, into heaven.
Sensational. I attended St. Stephen Martyr Church, Catholic Church in Washington, D.C. in the West End area, part of the time when I lived there. And it's just interesting to have that story come up. And in the context of Don Jr., who moments before was joking about online memes and getting in trouble with his dad, just a deeply profound moment. And I do picture Charlie having Jesus stand next to God when he's welcomed into heaven, because he was a martyr, and not just for American values, but those Judeo-Christian values that he preached as widely as anyone, as just about anyone in public life, period, even those who are full-time faith leaders. A remarkable moment among many others. Some other highlights I want to play for you. There was, of course, the highlight, which I played at the top of the show, and maybe we'll get around to playing again in the third hour, but was Erica Kirk saying that she forgave Charlie's assassin. I think that was very nicely balanced by some more tougher, more aggressive tones from some of the folks who are in our government. I think as individuals, we are called to be forgiving as Christians. But I think that as our government, they need to preserve justice. And that's where Stephen Miller comes in. And I want to play, let's play cut 26 here, Mr. Dwayne.
The storm whispers to the warrior that you cannot withstand my strength. And the warrior whispers back, I am the storm. Erica is the storm. We are the storm. And our enemies cannot comprehend our strength, our determination, our resolve, our passion.
This is why I love Stephen Miller, because he says what some of us who want to be fighters and want to feel tough, he just goes out there and says it plainly. And that means a lot, because a lot of people in the audience, I think, were there to hear more about Charlie and to remember Charlie and to contemplate all the good he did on this earth. But a lot of people are feeling angry. I go through my Kubler-Ross stages of grief. I always announce this to my show audience, which stage I'm in any given day on the Alex Marlow Show. And there's a lot of people who probably showed up in an angry mood that we were robbed of Charlie. We were robbed of him when he was so young and vibrant and aspiring to so much. I am on a text thread with some guys who are close to Charlie and have known him for a long time. We talk mostly about Israel in particular, but also some other issues. And there was a day where all of us at once seemed to start identifying Charlie as potentially a prophet. I was talking about it on my show, and I saw Tucker Carlson calling him perhaps a prophet, and I saw some others as well, Andrew Colvett, his executive producer of the Charlie Kirk Show. All of a sudden, it seemed like coincidentally, all of us, or maybe not coincidentally, started to refer to him as a prophet. And I got a text from one of Charlie's closest confidants and said, hey, I would have preferred president, but prophet's pretty good. And for those of us who would have preferred president to prophet, I think that a lot of people are still angry. And it's nice to have people like Stephen Miller who have our back. Let's play cut 27. I want a little more Miller here. This is just, it's too good not to do it.
Hello, Turning Point. Hello, Patriots. Hello to our fearless president, Donald J. Trump. And hello to millions of Americans all across this land who are gathered in sadness and sorrow to mourn Charlie Kirk, but also to dedicate ourselves to finishing his mission and achieving victory in his name. The day that Charlie died, the angels wept, but those tears have been turned into fire in our hearts. And that fire burns with a righteous fury that our enemies cannot comprehend or understand.
It's just right. It's just right. It is for some people in the audience. That was what they want, especially from the government, not as individuals who we are compelled by God to forgive. That is the highest calling of the Christian, and is the highest calling of the Jew, I imagine, as well, though I guess I'm not as fluent. But the point is that our government now, it's time for them to deliver justice and to hold the bad guys accountable, to investigate them, and to try to stop them from what they're doing. And we have this climate of violence, this assassination culture, and so many people who in their hearts and in their minds want to codify what this assassin did, taking Charlie's life, playing God himself. And we need to have a government that stands against that. So it's nice to have guys as muscular as Stephen Miller and Pete Hegseth and Donald Trump Consumer Cellular leading the way. Have you looked at your cell phone bill lately? How much data are you actually using, and how much data are you buying? Have you looked at all the hidden fees and surcharges, or have you noticed that your bill has gone up recently? After you check your bill, check out Consumer Cellular, where you really get savings without sacrifice. It only takes about 20 minutes to switch, and you will get $25 off using Hugh25. Call 1-800-411-4454 or log on to consumercellular.com/Hugh. New customers get a $5 credit on your first 5 monthly invoices. Visit consumercellular.com/Hugh for details. Don't forget, if you're 50 or older, you can get 2 unlimited lines for $60. That's $30 each line, unlimited. You can better manage your cost of living, your essential expenses by using Consumer Cellular. And you get $25 off using promo code HUGH25, savings without sacrifice. Use Hugh's promo code HUGH25 or call 1-800-411-4454. That's something, I can remember that number. That's a good, they get those, like the guy on the side of the road with the accidentes, dose, 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 like really easy to remember. That was my text. Dwayne, you'll like this. That was my text when one of my children would have an accident. My wife asked me how things are going. Then I would just text dose, 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 dose. That was the code for there was an accident that took place. All right. You guys know what I mean by that. All right. I'm playing some more clips, and we'll have a lot more next hour. I want these guys to get their due. I want people to hear these. They are going to hear them, but I just want to draw attention to some of the best ones. Here's the vice president, cut 14.
Charlie brought the truth that young people deserved a stake in the future and that they deserved to have a voice. He brought the truth that marriage and family were the highest callings, far more important than any job or educational credential. He brought the truth that our nation would fade unless it brought order to its neighborhoods and prosperity to its people. He brought the truth that life was precious, and we must fight to protect it at all stages and at all times. But most of all, Charlie brought the truth that Jesus Christ was the King of Kings and that all truth flowed from this first and most important one.
Sensational and surprising to see such direct praise of Jesus Christ. Okay, let's squeeze in cut 17, Dwayne. We got to do it.
Charlie suffered a terrible fate, my friends. We all know it. We all saw it. But think, it is not the worst fate. It is better to face a gunman than to live your life afraid to speak the truth.
Amen.
Amen. Amen and amen.
Amen. Amen. Everyone in the room saying amen. I'm Alex Marlowe. I'm the editor-in-chief of Breitbart News, host of the Alex Marlowe Show podcast on the Salem News Channel, and the host of, that's the only thing I'm a host of. I also have a book, Breaking the Law, endorsed by Hugh Hewitt. And we were in a breaking news environment here, folks. President Trump was speaking today from the White House about a potential, I would say, piece of evidence to suggest that maybe some of the mystery around the latest rash of autism appearing in children, where that could come from. Apparently he's got some answers. I have not heard these, so we'll be hearing these for the first time together unless you happen to be watching the press conference. Let's play cut 35 there, Mr. Dwayne.
The meteoric rise in autism is among the most alarming public health developments in history. There's never been anything like this. Just a few decades ago, 1 in 10,000 children had autism. So that's not a long time. And I've always heard, they say a few, but I think it's a lot less time than that. It used to be 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000. And I would say that's probably 18 years ago. And now it's 1 in 31, but in some areas it's much worse than that, if you can believe it, 1 in 31. And I gave numbers yesterday. For boys, it's 1 in 12. I was told that's in California where they have for some reason, a more severe problem. But whether it's 1 in 12 or 1 in 31, can you imagine? That's down from 1 in 20,000, then 1 in 10,000. And now we're at the level of 1 in 12 in some cases for boys, 1 in 31 overall. So since 2000, autism rates have surged by much more than 400%. Instead of attacking those who ask questions, everyone should be grateful for those who are trying to get the answers to this complex situation.
All right, so we got one other clip. Let's play this, and I've got some thoughts, but let's hear a little bit more.
Tylenol during pregnancy can be associated with a very increased risk of autism. So taking Tylenol is not good. All right, I'll say it. It's not good. For this reason, they are strongly recommending that women limit Tylenol use during pregnancy unless medically necessary. That's, for instance, in cases of extremely high fever, that you feel you can't tough it out, you can't do it. I guess there's that. It's a small number of cases, I think. But if you can't tough it out, if you can't do it, that's what you're going to have to do. You'll take a Tylenol, but it'll be very sparingly. It can be something that's very dangerous to the woman's health. In other words, a fever that's very, very dangerous, and ideally a doctor's decision, because I think you shouldn't take it. And you shouldn't take it during the entire pregnancy. They may tell you that toward the end of the pregnancy, you shouldn't take it during the entire. And you shouldn't give the child the Tylenol every time he's born and he goes and has a shot. You shouldn't give a Tylenol to that child. All pregnant women should talk to their doctors for more information about limiting the use of this medication while pregnant. So ideally, you don't take it at all. But if you can't tough it out, or if there's a problem, you're going to end up doing it.
All right, so the Tylenol parent company is Kenvue. KVUE is how it is on the stock ticker. And they've announced that Tylenol is safe, but stocks still hit record low during the speech. And so what's interesting there's a bunch of interesting things in it. And I'll draw off of it. I don't have a medical background, but I'm married to a physician and have lots of physicians in my family. So there are a lot of missing components here because, first of all, we know that the ability to diagnose autism is much higher than it is or that it was decades ago. So I think that is going to be a clear factor here, and I'm sure it'll be cited by Tylenol in discussions that are going forward. One other thing that's very clear to me that from observable truths that seem to be connected to autism is that older age of pregnancy. Women, but particularly men being older, there seems to be pretty clear correlation between men having children at an older age and more autism. And so I don't know how much that affects it and if whatever data we're going to see released, if that is accounted for in that as well. And I do think also, Trump was also suggesting that children not take Tylenol when they're born or when they're young as well, even though the initial sort of press releases were about Tylenol consumption during pregnancy. Final observation here that I'll make here is that this is not vaccine related. And so much of the discussion about autism was assumed that it was related to vaccines. And I think that's been a lot of the online chatter in particular, and people under the impression that some of the vaccines we take are what's been connected to autism. And we're not there yet. So our friend Charlie tweeted, I guess I think it was in April, I don't have it in front of me, but I think that if I remember that correctly, that in September specifically, President Trump was going to make a big announcement with Robert Kennedy about autism. So I don't know how Charlie knew this, and I don't know how he knew about September, but here we are on the 22nd day of September, and here is a big announcement. So connecting Tylenol taken during pregnancy to autism. So we'll see the exact details. Trump obviously does not speak as a layman. He does not speak as a medical person in terms of his language. So we'll certainly have details for you, Breitbart.com, and I imagine he will have some as well in the days to come. But really interesting. But stocks down 25%. This is going to be something bad news for the company that makes Tylenol overall. But I'm interested to see really what the details are. But overall, I will say something for pregnancy. This is what was practiced in my medical household, is that you really want to take as little supplementation as possible unless directed by a doctor. That's just a guarantee that that's going to be the best thing for the baby, is trying to keep things to a minimum. Obviously stuff like alcohol and cigarettes, but even things like caffeine to a relative minimum, and then any sort of medication needs to be kept at a relative minimum. And you want to take stuff that's been really studied thoroughly and feel like you have a great confidence that people have tested stuff in pregnancy. But I will say one other thing: if you are deeply concerned about autism in your life, it is all the more incentive, if you can do this yourself, if you're a younger person or if you have younger people in your life, encourage people to get married and have children at a younger age. I think that's going to prove over time to be the best way to avoid that condition for children. So, and that's what we all want. But really bold stuff and really compelling, and we'll continue to bring you details as I have them, if I have more on the show. The White House has released an autism action plan. Again, I'm reading this for the first time right now on the air. Number one, informing doctors and families. The FDA will issue a physician notice and initiate a safety label change on acetaminophen, which is the active ingredient in Tylenol. Research shows a potential association between acetaminophen use during pregnancy and advanced neurodevelopmental outcomes. Prudent use is needed during pregnancy and for infants and toddlers. So it is saying infants and toddlers as well, so not just pregnancy. And they're very specific here with this use that there shows potential association, so not guaranteed association, so take that for what it's worth. Health and Human Services will launch a nationwide public service campaign to inform families and protect public health. I think that's already started. Number 2, making a therapeutic available. FDA will act to establish the first recognized therapeutic, leucovorin. Leucovorin, a new therapeutic for me. Just learning about it right here on the show. For children with cerebral folate deficiency and autistic symptoms. Following FDA's action, state Medicaid programs will be able to cover leucovorin for autism spectrum disorder. National Institute of Health will launch confirmatory trials and new research in the impact of leucovorin. And the third and final item here, increasing research investment through the Autism Data Science Initiative, ADSI. The National Institute for Health will be funding 13 projects totaling more than $50 million in investment to transform autism research. I'll tell you all, a lot of faith in Robert Kennedy. I think he's a guy who actually does follow the science. I think that his haters are wrong, and I think even his most ardent critics are wrong. I don't think he's a conspiracy theorist. I think he's a guy who actually wants to see the science play out. So we'll be interested to see where this goes, but a big announcement on the autism front. All right, we'll be back to memorializing and celebrating my friend Charlie Kirk and talking about the incredible event that I got to witness yesterday in Arizona. This is very fun with the midday shows. We get the breaking news of free speech being restored in America because Jimmy Kimmel's back on the air. I mean, that was a real threat there. Fascism had really taken over. It's the Kimmel's low-rated show. And then is that not surreal? It was kind of worth it just to see the left react to Kimmel having to take a 3-day vacation as if it was worse than Charlie Kirk being murdered on 4K video while he spoke politely to students. Like, just unbelievable. And the left did not see it. They did not see themselves. They failed that test. And then learning about Trump's new autism action plan. So amazing stuff in the middle of a show that was already packed to begin with. We're going to get back to some clips that I think are really important from yesterday in Glendale at one of the events, I would say, of the century for this country. I think a faith revival, the best Trump rally of all time, and a unbelievable send-off to my friend Charlie Kirk, a true legend. But Hugh Hewitt himself, the host of this show and a fast friend of mine, has been on Fox. He was on Fox this morning. He was giving his reaction, and his reaction to some of the left's reaction, which I think is equally important. Let's play Hugh, cut 1.
Fox News contributor Hugh Hewitt joins me now. Hugh, great to have you on the program. I want to read a quote from the New York Post editorial board who says this could actually be a good thing for the country, an AOC presidential run, because it will, quote, force the Democrat Party to either finally quit playing footsie with the far left or go all in, and so get slaughtered, opening the way for a new, sane liberal party to surface. You agree with that, Hugh?
I do. I do think that Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez comes out of the Democratic Socialist wing of the party. It is hard left. And I also think, I want to point this out, Todd, when she took to the floor of the House last week to attack Charlie Kirk, it was below the standards of common decency that most Americans expect. And on the other side of yesterday, which I believe will go down as probably the world's largest ever evangelical moment, and the emotional moment where Erica Kirk forgave the killer, the testimonies of Vice President Vance and Secretary Rubio, President Trump's salute to no, there's nothing that anyone with a good heart can't accomplish. That on the other side of that, most Americans, and I think Americans playing between the 10s, not even the 20s, but between the 10s, are going to say she lacks the basic decency we expect out of someone coming from the Democratic Party. Add on these far left-wing positions that she holds and her charge against Charlie of ignorance, which was rebutted by, like, Dr. Larry Arnn, president of Hillsdale College yesterday, and Dr. Ben Carson, the brain surgeon and former HUD secretary, and you're going to find yourself looking at a big mountain. I think the sequence of events, from her comments on the floor to that hugely evangelical testimony that went on for hours about the objective truth of Christianity yesterday, to this week, her stock crashed over the weekend because most Americans are good-hearted and not that crazy about politics, and especially about extremist politics. and her policies are extreme. So I think the Post is correct.
Not to be outdone there, Hugh. The country spends one day remembering Charlie Kirk. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett not sharing in that. She doubles down on her vote against a resolution to honor him. Let's listen to Jasmine Crockett.
The rhetoric that Charlie Kirk continuously put out there was rhetoric that specifically targeted people of color. And so it is unfortunate that even our colleagues could not see how harmful his rhetoric was, specifically to us. Yeah, I'm not honoring that kind of stuff. And it is unfortunate that more of my colleagues, even on my side of the aisle, could not see the amount of harm that this man was attempting to inflict upon our communities.
Hugh, she apparently missed Turning Point's Young Black Leadership Summit, and of course, the other outreach to the black community from Turning Point and from Charlie Kirk himself over the years. Your thoughts?
She missed a lot. I saw that. I saw that clip before the service began. It's objectively not true about Charlie. I've known Charlie since 2013. He didn't have a racist bone in his heart. He spoke about issues of race when they came up in the national conversation with great care and concern for listeners everywhere. So it's objectively not true. Again, I think this is going to be putting Congresswoman Crockett opposite 90% of America who never dance on the graves of the dead, especially in the middle, on the morning of what is, again, I'll just say it again, Todd, objectively the largest evangelical service I've ever seen, with person after person testifying to the objective truth of Christianity, and she's attacking the victim and the victim's family indirectly by calling them racist. They're not. She's wrong. An apology would help her. It might redeem AOC. But folks in politics, and I think in the news business, have got to recognize that yesterday was, to borrow Charlie's phrase, a significant turning point in the return of religion to the public square and of belief to the public square. And if they get that wrong and they're tin-eared about it, the American people are listening very closely in the aftermath of it, as they did after RFK's shooting, which I can barely remember, after they did after JFK's assassination. And they're listening not for anything except kindness and decency and perhaps maybe some affinity for religious belief that if it's missing, it's going to put them in a distinct minority. So she did miss a lot. You're right, Todd. She missed a lot of Charlie Kirk. That's unfortunate. Maybe she'll go watch the tapes and call Erica Kirk and apologize.
So well said. Hugh Hewitt, thanks for getting up early.
That was a really expert hit by Hugh, because you could see, Dwayne, you'll know this. The prompt must have been, we're going to bring you in to dunk on AOC and Crockett. And so he did that very efficiently, and then he threw it back to what Hugh wanted to talk about, which is that this was really a moment where God returned to the public square in a meaningful way. And so that's how you do it. That's exactly how you do these hits.
He's really, really good at doing these media hits.
That was perfect. That's exactly right. You answer the question, and then, but in the amount of time where, you got like 70 seconds each for these answers, roughly, pivot back to what he wanted to say. And Hugh's big point was, this was the return of God to American politics, which is totally right.
Yeah, don't forget the big picture here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really well done. And the dunks on Crockett and AOC were great. I love the word indecent is perfect. It's indecent. We're mostly decent people. Not all of us, not the people who want to entertain the lie that there's some sort of a MAGA guy, the Kimmels of the world. Which I got to say this about Kimmel. Has he apologized yet? Has he taken back the lie? I don't think he has.
No, but so he hasn't made any statement today. He will not make any online statement today. Of course, everybody's looking at his monologue tomorrow. He almost will have to. Otherwise, the calculus hasn't changed for Sinclair
Right.
and the affiliates.
Yeah, he's got to. But even so, he shouldn't have been allowed to get back on for ABC Disney. And mark this down, he should not have been allowed back on without fully retracting his false statement. Which
So I guess we're no longer in an authoritarian state, right?
We're not. Trump got one-upped by Bob Iger at Disney. That guy's very woke. Bob Iger is woke. He's not. He doesn't look like a woke guy. He looks like maybe one of those CEOs who's, I'm just doing business here. No, he's a woke person. Mark that down as an important thing. I think that something that is so essential to point out, though, from Hugh's clip is that not only did Charlie have a Black Leadership Summit and reach out to people, I was just at an event that Charlie was supposed to be at on Friday in Nashville, and I was introduced to the lead of the TPUSA Faith, who's a pastor, John Amanchukwu, who is a Black man. I spoke on stage with Sage Steele and Jason Whitlock, both of whom were praising Charlie Kirk. Both are Black individuals. Charlie had throngs of black fans, admirers, and people that Charlie admired who was black. Ben Carson was there, of course, at the event yesterday. I mean, why do we have to engage in discussion? It's only because Jasmine Crockett is a liar. She's a liar. She isn't just wrong, she's lying to you, and hopefully people will see through it. I checked in with Mrs. Dr. Marlowe during the break, double board certified physician, and trying to get her to take a look at what President Trump is putting out and Secretary Kennedy about autism and its connection to Tylenol. Her response looks like possible Tylenol exposure during pregnancy is the culprit. Looks like possible association. Possible associations were specific, but no high-quality studies have been done. There have been no randomized controlled trials, but those will never be done on a pregnant population because it isn't ethical. So it looks like we're stepping closer to understanding what's going on, but it's not a full-fledged, we've solved the mystery. The end of the episode of Columbo is over. But I do admire that they're looking into it fearlessly, and hopefully that this will provide some good for some people, and we can get to the bottom of certain things. But it would be tough to hold Tylenol stock today, I'll tell you that. All right, I was thinking about Erica Kirk's moment yesterday. The whole speech was fantastic, and everyone should watch it. You should be aware of it. It'll be seen as a historic speech, as was her speech a week ago last Friday. But the key moment of the night, saying that I forgive him of the assassin who killed Charlie, with her lovely preamble where she discussed how Charlie was trying to save these exact people, young men who were not being reached by society and were essentially getting shuffled aside. And that's the exact audience Charlie was trying to court the most, saying that she forgived him. And I was thinking about that in contrast of some of the anger that bubbles up when you play the AOC and the Jasmine Crockett clips. And Trump had a moment, which we're not going to play, I can summarize it, where he was definitely half tongue-in-cheek on this, but saying that Charlie didn't hate his opponents, and he says, "Oh, but I do, I really do, I really hate them." And it was, I think a lot of people didn't like that Trump said that, but I think he was being half joking because they are so loathsome in so many ways, and it just reminds you of how powerful Erica's moment was. The ultimate act of godliness really is forgiveness, and that is why, as I noted in the first hour, when we say the Lord's Prayer in Catholic Mass every week, we forgive those who trespass against us. It is mandatory. Every single week we remind ourselves of that commitment that we make in our faith. So really important. All right, more clips. Let's play some Erica. How about cut 10 there, Dwayne?
Before he was murdered,
I was Charlie's confidant. I was his vault. His closest and most trusted advisor, his best friend. I poured into him and loved him so deeply, empowered him, because his love for me drove me to be a better wife. Every day he honored me, and I prayed that I could be the wife that God needed me to be for my husband. Women, I have a challenge for you too. Be virtuous. Our strength is found in God's design for our role. We are the guardians. We are the encouragers. We are the preservers. Guard your heart. Everything you do flows from it. And if you're a mother, please recognize that is the single most important ministry you have.
It's just a lovely message for women, even women who have careers and are not trad women. I think that just being guardians and being encouragers is so important. And I think about one of the roles that my wife plays in my life, and I've been very blessed. We met when we were 17 years old and have been together ever since. And she does encourage me, and I think that that's such a beautiful sentiment. And I think it's something that is, I don't think I'd have achieved nearly as much as I have in my life if I hadn't had that encouragement. And it's a beautiful message. And then you see some of these women going out, particularly the Crockett's and the Ilhan Omars and the AOC's, and it's just there's so much hatred in their heart, and the hatred flows out of it so publicly. And I think it was Ilhan Omar was just saying how Charlie should be on the ash heap of history. It's a who says these things out loud, and who do you think you're going to be courting with this? Just angry, godless people are the only people who are going to respond to something like that. It's just a profound contrast, and it's something that was really I think it was the heart of the matter yesterday. The heart of the matter was something Erica said that I played in the first hour of the show.
Do you remember a couple of months ago?
Yeah, go ahead, Dwayne.
You remember a couple months ago when Michelle Obama was on a podcast
Yeah.
and said the least important part of a woman's
That's right.
Reproductive system was to have children.
Right. Yes.
I mean, just contrast that.
Yeah.
It's just objectively truth what Erica was saying.
And this is what's so important about Charlie's worldview is that a lot of women are told not to serve your husband and submit to your husband, but to submit to your boss, someone in a corporate hierarchy. That no, you don't have time for a husband and to build a marriage with a husband because you're too busy working for Mark Zuckerberg at Facebook or Meta, or you're too busy working for Jeff Bezos, or you're too busy working for Elon Musk, one of his million companies. No, that's not a godly way. Maybe that's a way to financial freedom for some people, but the true way to fulfilling life is to get married with children with a lovely husband who honors you and cherishes you. The big question now is, will the ratings for ABC go up or down if Kimmel goes back on the air? Because maybe they'll actually go down. I think that pretty much anything would do better than Kimmel's show. I think people rush to turn off Kimmel once he turns on. So I would love to see it. I think the left really fell for a trap in this one, acting like Kimmel taking a long weekend was worse than Charlie getting murdered. It's just a thought that I had. I'm Alex Marlowe, by the way, editor-in-chief of Breitbart News. Very grateful for Hugh to be in here. If you like what you're hearing, please like the show, subscribe to the Alex Marlowe Show podcast, Salem Podcast Network. I'm also on the weekends on the Salem News Channel, so that'd be very good to do that. And if you subscribe, particularly on YouTube, I think the suits like that the best, so that's a good one to do. And leave a comment, even if you don't like it. Leave a negative comment, because I'll tell you, the worst thing is no engagement. Negative engagement is better than no engagement. So positive best, negative second best. But I do appreciate everyone sticking with me today. I want to tell you about American Exploration and Production Council, AXPC.org. Washington's broken permitting system is hurting families and America's energy security. And with demand for reliable, affordable energy surging, now is the time to act. Without comprehensive, durable permitting reform, energy producers and infrastructure developers will continue to face red tape and endless litigation, delaying and derailing projects that could make energy prices more affordable, create jobs, and increase our competitiveness with China. You know I want that. The American Exploration and Production Council, AXPC, represents leading independent oil and gas producers that has a blueprint for Congress to fix this broken system. Their plan modernizes outdated and weaponized permitting laws to make the process faster, more predictable, and consistent across agencies and industries. This is common sense reform, cutting bureaucracy, not environmental safeguards. Here's the reality. American-made oil and natural gas will be essential to meet growing energy demand. If we lead, we lower costs for families, secure higher-paying jobs, and strengthen our national security. If we stall, our advertisers step in, and Americans pay the price with their wallets and in lost opportunity. The stakes couldn't be higher. Our economy and energy dominance depends on it. See the plan for yourself. Here's the website, axpc.org. That's axpc.org. Check them out. All right, I want to spend a lot of the remaining time I have to continue to play highlights from the remarkable memorial yesterday, which I have to emphasize, went off without a hitch. I was a lot of nervous energy when I was getting there. I didn't know if people would be able to get in. I didn't know that, and I was lucky enough to be able to have a VIP pass, a humble brag there, but I was close with Charlie, and I was nervous about it, and we got there very early, and they got people in. People were happy. There was an incredible band that, Dwayne, you're familiar with the band, right? The music was just sensational, and I'm not a big gospel music guy or revival music guy. I like it, but the church music is not my go-to when I'm doing spins in the house, but these guys, the musicianship, the songs, they were just the singing, just ridiculous, and it kept
these are contemporary Christian artists that are kind of hot in that world right now. My home church, which is Harvest Fellowship in Southern California, which does the Harvest Crusades with Greg Laurie. Many of these people are the ones that do the worship music service and energize the arenas or stadiums for Harvest Crusades. And Turning Point reached out to our pastor, to our team, and said, hey, we want to do music ahead of this. Can you help us with some contacts of who might be available? And Greg Laurie got a hold of Brandon Lake and Phil Wickham and Carrie Joby and Cody Carnes and Chris Tomlin, all these really just phenomenally talented musicians. And all asked them, and every single one of them, and not just them, but their whole entourage, their drummers and bass players. I mean, the whole team just said, "Yep, we're in," and they just dropped what they're doing and came.
Wow, unbelievable. And they were so good. They were just really, really striking and adding to the energy. And I love that they had the pyrotechnics and people seeing that, because that's what Charlie would have wanted. Charlie's whole vision was he wanted to have a rock concert event for conservatives, and he thought that was part of the way to win the culture war and the spiritual war at the same time. So,
and it was a celebration of life.
Absolutely it was. And I'll tell you, I cried at a couple of them, but it was a 5-hour thing. It was very, very long. But it was, for the most part, it was very upbeat and celebratory. And again, another thing that Charlie was a happy warrior. And so this is a good way to honor him. All right, I'm going to squeeze in a few more clips. Rob McCoy, Charlie's pastor, who's out in Thousand Oaks, California, gave a very moving speech. We'll play cut 30 there, Dwayne.
Now my responsibility, entrusted to me by my friend and his wife. You're going to hear of what Charlie did, but I'm here today to tell you the why in what
I love
he did.
this. Great pull, Dwayne.
The why brought him the courage. The why brought him the wisdom and the strength. The why is the one that Charlie wanted to welcome as the guest of honor. The guest of honor, his resume is long. He's the King of Glory. He's the Prince of Peace. He's the Savior of the world. He's the living God. He's the God of all mercy and grace. The total embodiment of love, the total embodiment of truth. And he's here today to call his children back to him.
That was one of the moments where I teared up. That one was unbelievable. And he's got an amazing son, Mikey McCoy, who is Charlie's chief of staff, who's a young man who I came to respect a lot, who lost a real mentor as well. He gave a great speech. Also, I'm going to play some more cuts. Let's play the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, cut 22, please.
And Charlie Kirk was impactful. Impactful because of all the things I've said, but look around this place. There's 100-something thousand people here. The President of the United States is here. His entire cabinet is here. Television outlets and media outlets from all over the world are covering this. I just came from overseas, and every country I stopped, they gave us their condolences for his passing. Impactful. In just 31 years of life, he made a difference. He mattered, and he will matter now more than he ever has before.
Beautiful. I got one more Rubio I want to play, cut 23. This really was one of the best speeches of the night, for sure.
He came to me very recently. He said some quote. I said, who said that? He said, Marcus Aurelius. I said, what district does he represent? I kind of knew who it was, but he said back, no, it's a Roman, philosopher king or emperor. His incredible knowledge. Let me tell you that one of the last messages I had with him was just a few days before his passing, where he wrote me from overseas, I'm in South Korea. I have many concerns I want to share with you when I get back. He was constantly expanding his horizons, but he just didn't have knowledge. He had wisdom, an uncanny amount of wisdom for a man as young as he was. Wisdom that sometimes it takes a lifetime to accumulate. He had it.
We need to bring into that Department of Wisdom that Prager's always talking about. We got to create one of those things. It's a great idea. Great stuff from the Secretary of State. Well, this has been a treat. It flew by just as I had anticipated. I have some people to thank: Dwayne, Harley, and Adam in the studio with me today. I'm Alex Marlow, by the way, author of the Hugh Hewitt endorsed Breaking the Law and the Alex Marlow Show podcast on the Salem Podcast Network, wherever you get your pods. And it has just been an amazing, remarkable opportunity to see the country come together and to celebrate it on air with you good people, just because Charlie Kirk meant so much to me as an individual, but even I had no idea exactly how far his message was reaching. And even though in life it would have gone much further than it had already gone, in death, perhaps it could be even larger. And that's why we need a national holiday on October 14th, Charlie Kirk's birthday. We got to make it a holiday. Let's do it. Let's elevate it. And let's make sure he gets the legendary status, not just in the eyes of the Lord, but in the eyes of man. And I've got one more clip I've been meaning to play for you guys. This is J.D. Vance.
It is better to be persecuted for your faith than to deny the kingship of Christ. It is better to die a young man in this world than to sell your soul for an easy life with no purpose, no risk, no love, and no truth. Christ told us in the Gospel of John, I have said these things to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but take heart, I have overcome the world. Charlie took heart, and now we must do the same. I've seen so many of you say, so many on social media, talk about for Charlie. We must do this for Charlie. For Charlie, we will speak the truth every single day. For Charlie, we will rebuild this United States of America to greatness. For Charlie, we will never shrink, we will never cower, and we will never falter, even when staring down the barrel of a gun. For Charlie, we will remember that it is better to stand on our feet defending the United States of America and defending the truth than it is to die on our knees. My friends, for Charlie, we must remember that he is a hero to the United States of America and he is a martyr for the Christian faith. May our Heavenly Father give us the courage to live as Charlie lived. That is what we must do for Charlie. You ran a good race, my friend. I love you. We've got it from here. Thank you.
Sensational way to end the show. Thank you, Hugh. Thanks to all of you in the audience. Hugh is back tomorrow. I'm Alex Marlowe. Thanks for listening, and thank you, Charlie Kirk.